Hello and welcome to Legally Speaking with me Tarun Nangia. The Supreme Court Collegium, headed by the Chief Justice of India, Justice Deepak Mishra, has decided that henceforth all the elevations and all the appointments and even the transfers of judges would be put up on the Supreme Court website. This is a welcome change and is showing the way to where the judiciary is headed in the future. To discuss the issue of appointment of judges as a whole today, on Legally Speaking, I have with me Justice Jaspal Singh, former Judge, Delhi High Court, Senior Advocate Abhishek Manu Singhvi, a Member of Parliament and an eminent jurist, and Advocate Suman Jyoti Khaitan, a very well-known corporate lawyer and founder of Suman Jyoti Khaitan and Company. Welcome all of you, sparing your time for this episode of Legally Speaking. So, first of all, we'll start with opening comments. Mr. Singhvi, if you could please tell me that after you read the decision of the Collegium, what would be your first reaction upon reading it?
Well, I think it's everybody would agree largely that it's a very welcome decision. It's a great start. It is a necessary condition, but it is by no means a sufficient condition. You need to constantly improve this process, and I'm not grudging the fact that they've started it. But take as example, if you actually see what they've put up, in many cases, not in all though, they have given conclusions and not really reasons. Now, I'm not finger pointing, I'm not finding fault because it's a great start. But over time, you have to make it at the minimum with reasons relevant to the decision disclosed. Because the idea is that people know. I do not, however, take the extreme view which some of my friends have taken that you should disclose or put up on the website the entire minutes. I mean, let's not allow some kind of a imaginary perfect to be the enemy of the good. We have to work it out in a reasonable way, but I think it inhibits candor and frankness if you start. But certainly, reasons relevant to rejection and reasons relevant to appointment should be disclosed, even if those inverted commas of 5 lines or 3 lines are disclosed. There are a lot of other things which should happen over time. I'm not saying this is the end, but it's a great start.
It's a great start. Advocate Khaitan, if you could tell me, sir, what is your reaction to this decision of the Collegium?
Well, I think it's a welcome step, and most people were expecting it would come earlier. It's good it has come. Now, I'll only add one thing, that if supposing this was unanimous, that's okay. If there was a decision, then the views of different judges, in my view, should also be put up. I'll tell you why. We are moving towards a more and more transparent society. We are still far behind America, where they are put to rigorous interview by the Senate, and everything is on television, and they also have voting. I'm not saying India is ripe for that stage today, but I think judiciary should, if it becomes more transparent, it's good for everybody, because then we overcome the argument that many of these judicial members, they are either ex-lawyers or relative of judges or ex-juniors, etc. So that's another allegation which we should get over, number one. Number two, obviously all the transfers must be on some meritorious ground. You cannot just transfer the way you transfer a bureaucrat or a police officer. So what is the reason which necessitated the transfer? That is a must. It should not be a feeling that you have just transferred for whatever reason. Same for appointment. Appointment, there is no two views that the man must be of the highest integrity possible, plus the competence, his experience and everything. So I think these are all factors which everybody agrees to. But as my friend just mentioned, it's a very welcome step.
It's a welcome
but we
step.
hope that there will be more transparency in the days to come.
Justice Jaspal Singh, you have served on the bench, and when you read such a decision, what would be your first reaction?
Well, I do tend to agree with my friends that it's a welcome step, but I do regard it to be a very, very small step. It's healthy, no doubt, but leaves a lot of scope for improvement. Of course, reasons should be given.
Yes.
But then putting out on website that Mr. A has been elevated or B has been elevated, that will be in the newspapers very next day also. So it doesn't serve much purpose. That's why I say that it's a small step.
Justice Jaspal Singh making a very important point and being as frank as one can be when he says that this information would be out in the newspapers anyway the next day. But moving on, I'll get Advocate Singhvi. Sir, I want to ask you, and I read out a small statement. Justice Chemaleshwar had made for making it mandatory for the collegium to record its reasons for selecting a person for appointment as a judge or to the Supreme Court and the High Court, or transferring a judge from one High Court to the another. So he said that these reasons must be recorded in writing. In fact, a year ago he also opted out of the collegium and started recording his views on files containing the collegium's decision to select a person for appointment as judge and transfer of High Court judges. He had told a media house a year ago that the transfer wasn't a solution to disciplining a bad judge. So, if we stick to the appointment point itself, Justice Chemaleshwar has made it clear that reasons must be recorded in writing. How would you react to his statement and his observations?
Well, firstly, it is a vindication of his stand in the sense that there is a certain formalism about the reasons now come in. So, I would commend and congratulate him to the extent that his stand has been converted into reality. I am sure this applies to the other collegium members also, because it is not a unilateral view of someone. The difference between, there were reasons earlier also, but now the very fact that you are putting the reasons out in the website shows that they are both in writing and a certain set of objective reasons are given. I don't think the reasons come out in the press, so there is that clear net benefit to the country that the reasons come out on the website. But having said that, there is a lot more. Let us look at the intricate procedure in just half a minute. I have for long been a votary, I have spoken, I have written about it, that both for designation of seniors and for appointment of judges, especially after you had the collegium system, why don't you, and this can be done along with the same collegium, without disclosure, have uniformity. There is no uniformity in how you select, and there is no intergenerational uniformity. This collegium of 5 decides in a certain way. Amongst us, he likes something totally different, you like something totally different, I like something totally different. Intergenerationally, the next set of judges who come after 5 years decide on maybe something totally else. So, what I mean by uniformity is, I did write an article on this, and I said that why can't judges, whatever they decide, doesn't matter, have 4 criteria on which they will mark the appointees. Now, it can be, I'm not saying what they should be, it could be integrity, could be number of judgments and quality of judgments rather, could be experience, could be a performance in the bar prior. I'm just giving an example, it can be anything else. And within each parameter, Justice Jaspal Singh will mark differently, I will mark differently depending on my perception of the person. And so will Mr. Khaitan. But at least all 4 of us are forced to apply our mind to common 4 criteria. Yes. We just don't do it for designation of seniors. We should do it for both. And I'm not saying in the first phase that should be made public. But at least force yourself, and I argued this before the bench which was deciding designation of seniors as well, that at least internally, all of you 31 gentlemen must mark on uniform criteria.
Okay, that's a very important point raised by Advocate Abhishek Manu Singhvi. Sir, I would now like to ask you to react on the statements made by Justice Chemaleshwar in the past year or so.
Well, it's very dangerous
Yes.
for a lawyer to remark on statements by judges.
Yes.
I mean, we can be hauled up for contempt also. I mean, that's the right
But
or
not
wrong,
on
that's-
legally speaking, I think we have
Look,
been...
right or wrong, that's the atmosphere in our country.
Yes.
In America, of course, you can do a lot more.
Yes.
It's not a contempt, but we are within the constraints of our system. But just to take forward the point,
Yes.
which Mr. Singhvi just mentioned, even in a listed company, I'm a director as an independent legal director on listed companies. Now, independent directors need to have a meeting where on the same criteria as you said, different criteria because it's a company,
Yes.
you have to give points.
Yes.
Good, bad, average, 10, 9, 8 to each and every KM, which is a key managerial person, and the other directors also. And the other directors and the executives have to give similar marks to we as independent directors. Whether you're prompt, whether you've read the papers, whether you know the law, whether you have been attended, and all the marks have to be given. And that is, kept confidential, but that's part of a company's record. If it is so important, even for a director in a listed company, I'm sure it is far more important for a judge. Point number 1. Point number 2 we must understand is that we need an institutional approach, not an individual approach. This is what I think Mr. Singhvi was meaning. Each individual obviously will have his own approach, which is good. But you have to have an institutional approach. That is why if you frame rules and guidelines, that will help to have an institutional approach and also to have a smooth flow and shift from one generation to another. Because we need to flow with times also. So now coming back to your point of Justice Chelameshwar, look, he's entitled to his views. We have also heard some off the cuff remarks from another retired judge of Supreme Court, Mr. Kadju. Of course, that was way beyond.
Yes.
He was also issued notice of contempt by the
Yes.
Supreme Court. That is one part. But if Mr. Chelameshwar has a point, it's a good point, and to an extent it's been validated. Nobody has ever said that the collegium system is the best. In fact, if you read the letter of the Constitution, it is the President who appoints. It's consultation with the Chief Justice of India. That was the decision in the first judge's case. Then the Supreme Court
Now, I'll
changed the
take
interpretation.
on from where what you are saying, that if we see what the framers of our constitution intended, did they intend that judges should be appointed in consultation with the government or in concurrence with the government? And if the constitution framers indeed thought that judges should be appointed in consultation with the government, is the Constitution of India now being followed in that sense? Or what should we look at 10 years hence? Because the judiciary, in a sense, is also, with Justice Chemaleshwar speaking on this issue, there is a certain dialogue now happening also between the government and the judiciary. So in these times, I'd like to go across to Justice Jaspal Singh, sir. If you could tell me that if the constitution framers intended that the judges should be appointed in consultation with the government, and sir, it used to happen until, if I'm not wrong, 1994, what is the future looking at, or how should we look at things in the future?
Well, if you don't mind, let me first touch the question of transfer and Justice Chelameshwar's remarks.
Yes, please.
Very briefly. 3 of the judges of Delhi High Court were transferred. Obviously, for some reason. They have been transferred back. What is the reason? What was the reason for their transfer?
Yes.
First,
Yes.
and what is the reason for their coming back? You see, that's why Justice Chelameshwar says that please note it down so that the public should know at least.
I get your point.
And one of the transferees was never transferred.
Yes.
Why?
It's a good point, and we are going to record a separate episode on transfer, we can.
Now coming back to your question.
Yes.
Personally speaking, and from a little experience as a judge, the government should be kept away from appointment, miles away from it.
Miles away from it.
They are all politically motivated. They want their own people. They want their own yes men. It will play a havoc upon the judicial system. And that is why the judgment of the Supreme Court, probably that was the reason. Yes, to the extent that you have the reports of the Intelligence Bureau, that is acceptable. But beyond that, nothing.
Sir, are you speaking this specific that in India it is not, because in other
I'm talking of India, I'm not talking of other countries.
Yes. So I'll go across to
political situations there are different from the political situation here.
I take your point, sir. Mr. Singhvi, how would you look at all this situation?
I think it's an interesting question, and I would rather look at it from a historical perspective and think of it in 3 to 4 phases to understand the issue. It's a reality, but we should understand how the development happened. I think that from 1950 to approximately the late 70s, things worked well, strangely, even with an executive primacy. That was the phase of executive primacy. I remember in 1991, there was a matter in Chief Justice Rangnath Mishra's court, where the government was called upon to file an affidavit as to in how many cases there had been a difference of opinion in appointment from 1950 to 1990 between the government, who had the final word, and the judiciary, who were to recommend. And the affidavit said that barring 3 to 5 cases, there had been unanimity for 40 years. Now that's a great achievement of our system. Let's not forget that. However, that's number one. Number two, the sad truth is, and I'm not talking politics, you can see how frank I am,
Yes.
that somewhere from the 80s, and we've had the unfortunate supersession episode also in the 70s, I'm sorry, not 80s, 70s. From the late 70s, a phase occurred where, to put it mildly, appointments of indifferent quality, and I'm using the words of studied moderation,
Yes.
occurred. Therefore came phase 3, which was a clear backlash to indifferent quality of appointments. You notice that this did happen from 1950 to 1970s.
Yes.
When the quality changed of appointments, therefore it always happens, executive excess or executive abdication leads to judicial whiplash.
Yes.
So then came the first judge's case. They arrogated to themselves thinking they'll appoint better. Unfortunately, 80% of what happened to the central government happened to the collegium system of appointment from Justice Verma's pristine glory days of his first judgment till the second judge's case.
Yes.
However, the judges were not prepared to accept it. And I'll end very quickly. I know I'm taking time. The last phase was a phase which, according to me, I say it because I'm a very strong supporter now of the collegium system because it's been upheld.
You are a supporter?
No. I was the one who opened the debate on the NGAC.
Yes.
I believe that now that they have rejected it constitutionally, they should fully work out the collegium. But I believe the NGAC was to be given a chance as a third model, just like the executive primacy had failed, judicial primacy had failed, and there was an opportunity. NGAC, people forget, is nothing but a modified form of the collegium itself.
Yes.
It is a collegium which is both broader based
And
with judicial primacy still.
And as a
But they
parliamentarian,
didn't give it a chance.
As a parliamentarian, quickly in 30 seconds.
I opened the debate for it.
Yes.
In favor of NGAC.
Yes.
But I hold the view that once the Supreme Court has rejected its constitutionality,
Yes.
good, bad or indifferent, for whatever reason,
Yes.
we have no option but to work the existing system the best.
But sir, also as a parliamentarian, in
Yes.
30 seconds, I
Yeah,
want you to know the
yes,
fact
yes,
that
yes.
if there is a law which is now passed by all the state legislatures, the
Yeah,
parliament,
yeah.
and then the Supreme Court strikes it down, necessary, Supreme Court has the rights to strike anything that is bad in law. But how do you, because see, you have got the unique position
Yeah,
of
you're-
also
you're-
being in the Supreme Court and the parliament. You can give us that.
You
view.
are hearing it from his actual person who moved the bill. NGAC
Yes.
bill, I opened the debate.
Yes.
But I still believe that that's a debate not open to us now.
Okay,
In
so
our
you
constitutional system where the Supreme Court can declare a constitutional amendment unconstitutional,
Yes.
it is, like it or not, the truth is that they have the last word. Now they've pronounced the last word, so it's a futile debate to say
So you
should
would-
they have done it or not.
so you would rather
there are
look at
lots
the
of
future.
infirmities in that judgment, but today, honestly and in spirit, we must implement the judgment. Which is why, last point, I fault the Supreme Court that having arrogated the entire power from here to here,
Yes.
why are you not able to implement your judgment? Why do you cry and lament and complain when you make a recommendation as the judicial collegium? It goes to the central government.
Yes.
The central government sits on it for 6 months. The judgments are clear. Your own judgment is clear. You took the power from Mr. Jaspal Singh, took it to yourself. Now Justice Jaspal Singh is able to delay the whole appointment. The judgment says you reiterate it, and if they don't obey and implement, have the law secretary called up for contempt. And maybe on persistent default, you call the law minister once for
That's a
contempt.
very
Any
good-
government. Therefore, this lamentation is also misplaced. Today, you can't find any excuse for burgeoning arrears,
Yes.
for non-appointments.
Yes.
You cannot say that, look, he's sitting on the file. He cannot sit on the file under the law of the land beyond a certain time. Beyond that, you have to have the guts to implement it. I believe very strongly, as a supporter of NGAC,
Yes.
that now its power is with you, you jolly well implement the whole thing.
Mr. Singhvi was as frank as he could be as a parliamentarian and also eminent Supreme Court lawyer. We'll take a short break and be right back. Welcome back. Now we'll go into the annals of the judiciary and discuss what is unwritten. But what happens, and all judges know, all eminent lawyers know, and anybody who tracks the judiciary also knows, that there exists an unwritten quota system within the judiciary where no more than a certain number of judges are elevated from each high court or each state. So as we look at it, the quota system says, okay, no more than 3 judges from each state. Is this depriving really meritorious High Court judges from a chance at elevation at the Supreme Court? And if that is indeed happening, should something be done about it? Shouldn't merit matter above all? We will discuss this, and I'll get Justice Jaspal Singh on this. Sir, you would have seen how elevations happen. You know more about it than all of us. Could you please tell us what you think on this unwritten quota system, so to speak?
You have yourself said that it is unwritten.
Yes.
Now, Supreme Court is a representative of all the states. It's not basically wrong. It's not basically bad. But of course, if there is great talent, there is no reason why it should not be picked up. And you can't deprive a very talented person the position which is due to him only because there are already, the quota is already full for a state. I don't think it's followed to that strict sense. And it will be very healthy if people are picked up on merit. But keeping in view also that Supreme Court of course represents all of India.
I took your point. Mr. Singhvi, I would want your view on this, and also I would like to ask you, has it happened, and you argue cases in courts across the country, that you have ever felt that such a talented Chief Justice of the High Court missed being elevated at the Supreme Court? Because you argue before judges and you definitely have an idea.
Let me answer both your questions. On the first part, having been very critical of the collegium system and other systems just now before you, I think on the whole, on the question of your first part, they managed it rather well in the Supreme Court. Number one, merit continues to be the criterion. Number two, calls for caste-based, and caste includes various categories from SC, STs, OBCs to others, have been largely resisted by the court. Calls for official quota systems have been resisted. However, when you appoint on merit, I don't think it's wrong at all to keep a broad, general geographical consideration and also group or category consideration. That is not a quota. It's a difficult thing to juggle, but they manage it rather well. But only criticism there is when they do aberrations which create heartburning.
Okay.
There are two states, it's an open secret, who have, as of God's right, 3 slots each in the Supreme Court.
Yes.
So every other state asks me when I go to another high court, what is this divine right of these 2 states or these 2 capital cities of 2 states to have at least 3, not maximum 3, at least 3 always. I believe each of these states are very outstanding judges. That's not the point. But it does create heartburn. He's from another state. He says, why should I be only from one state? Therefore, this is the point. Second question, yes, I think the system today works because there are those anonymous judges, which most of us don't know, but whom I come across every day when I go out. There is that totally anonymous, unsung hero, non-ostentatious, not in the capital city, not dealing with politically sensational cases, not having the cameras on himself, who's doing an excellent job. I find it almost 50% time when I go to a Odisha High Court or Punjab Haryana High Court or Kerala High Court, you keep coming across. These are the people who are the backbone of the system. Without such conscientious, hard-working judges, and you're surprised. You say, look, he's sitting the back of beyond. He's totally unknown. He's doing such a good job. That's how the system works.
So you see, we have these gems in the Indian
yes, absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
So we have such gems in the Indian judiciary who do their hard work without seeking the so-called recognition, just do their work. That's a very good point made by Mr. Singhvi. Mr. Khaitan, your view on this issue?
No, I fully agree with them. In fact, recently, I don't go to Patiala Court Tizari very often. I went there, some of the judges are very, very good. I'll let you tell, even in the lower courts, even in the tribunals, for example, we have people who are very good and also very high on the integrity part and competent. And they concentrate on the work, one thing. Second thing, your audience and the public must know. They should applaud the Indian judiciary for working in such difficult conditions. You have 50 matters, 100 matters on your board every day. If it goes to America or in UK, the judges will not be able to handle. But they still handle. Partly you may say it's our fault. We are entertaining too many SLPs, we are entertaining too many appeals. And yes, to an extent, we have a long hierarchy of appeals. I think Law Commission should have a look at it and move so many hierarchy of appeals and review and revision and SLP, have less number of it. But now coming back to your basic point, see, the judicial system, you must have competent people right from the top to the bottom.
Yes.
If the bottom don't have competent people, then you'll have injustice across and you'll have more appeals up the system.
Yes.
So it's not that the bottom should not have good people. They should also have good people. But among the collection of good people, we all know, if we have all come across so many good people who should have made it higher, they have not made it higher ups.
Yes.
For whatever reason.
And you're admitting it.
No, everybody knows.
Yes.
There's no question. I mean, I'm not the appointing authority,
yes,
so I can't admit. But
yes,
during our practice, we all know.
Yes.
But coming back to your thing, all the tribunals should also be manned by competent people.
Yes.
It does not mean that you take away talent from
Tribunal is another big debate, but
you see, there's another big issue which you can have a separate
yes,
chapter.
yes.
All these tribunals ultimately are
Yes.
bypassing the High Court,
Okay.
which may or may not be a very good thing.
We're totally running out of time, so I may have to now say I have drawn this discussion to a close, but thank you so much, Mr. Singhvi, for sparing your time, and Mr. Khaitan and Justice Jaspal Singh. Indeed, thankful to you for sparing time and joining us on Legally Speaking. So as we saw that today, all our three panelists were so frank in what they would have seen of the collegium system and the appointment of judges and the elevation of judges, and what would they like to see of it. We will track this issue as it develops in the coming months, but that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Legally Speaking.